Have you ever been in a situation where they like you more than you like them? Or maybe the honeymoon phase isn't going as expected? What about a situation where your relationship is abundant in security and safety, but lacks the excitement you crave? Today, we're getting into it all. Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease, whether you've been on dozens of dates or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun. And I have three dating dilemmas to answer today. These are all so relatable. And I want to thank you for submitting your dating and relationship dilemmas and allowing me to share them on the podcast. If you have a question or issue you want my take on, you can submit your question anonymously in the form linked in the show notes below. Real quick, just want to let you know that I'm answering even more of your dating questions on YouTube. So if you sent one in, there's a good chance I've covered it on YouTube as well. All of my podcasts are also available on YouTube, so if you prefer watching over listening, come hang out with me there. My channel is called Dating Intentionally. You can subscribe for more video content. I'm also on Instagram at dating.intentionally, so feel free to slide into my DMs and let me know what topics you'd love for me to cover on the podcast or in a YouTube video. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this background vibe. You can see I'm in my office. This is the last recording that I'm doing in this current location in this current office. I'm moving 5 minutes away. We're moving into a house. I'm very excited to have a new studio space and kind of build it out even more. But I'm just feeling a little sentimental because this is where I went full time with the podcast. And now I'm moving on to somewhere new. So, yeah, this is the last time you'll see this space. Anyway, let's get to it. This first dilemma is from a woman who feels she doesn't know if she'll ever fall in love with a guy she's been dating. I, 34 female, have been dating a guy, 38 male, for a month and a half now. We are exclusive. I like him a 6.5 out of 10, and he seems to like me an 11 out of 10. I like to take things slow, and I'm feeling a bit uncertain about a long term relationship with him, but I'm trying to do something different. He is so kind, attentive, intentional, etc., but I'm just not sure if I'll fall in love with him. Should I communicate my uncertainty? And if so, how should I do it in a kind way that doesn't make him feel like I'm still into this, but I need to take it slow? Oof, have you been there? Let me know in the comments if you are listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube. I'd love to hear your take on this one. So, to answer your question, should you tell the person you're dating that you don't know if you can fall in love with them? No. Absolutely not. Because what happens is then they feel like they have some power over the situation, and it causes so much unnecessary anxiety when really this is your thing to figure out on your own. Ultimately, if you're feeling this way, this is more about you than them. By you telling them, they're not going to change something they're doing to make you fall in love with them. That's not how it's going to go. All they can do is show up as their authentic self, and all you can do is see them for who they are and tap into your feelings. Even if you say, there's nothing you can do or I don't want you to change, it's just not worth the pain. Telling them isn't necessarily going to help you figure it out. But I think you can say, hey, I'm a little slower when it comes to growing emotionally close to someone. And I just want you to know that I think you're amazing. I just might not be where you're at yet. I also want to give you permission to take your time. Like, if it's been a month and a half, you said you're a 6.5 out of 10, which is very specific. It sounds like you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to know if you'll fall in love with him, but attraction and emotional connection are just not always instant. It sounds like you like him enough to have dated him for this long. You might just need a little more time to build that deeper emotional connection. Especially if you've experienced relationships in the past where you fall really quickly for someone, right? Maybe this is different. My second tip is to stop analyzing how much you like him. The more you focus on, do I like him enough? The more you disconnect from actually experiencing the relationship. Like, it's hard to be present when you're hanging out with someone or spending time with someone and you're just in your head being like, do I like him enough? Am I having enough feelings for this person? Like, you need to be in the moment. I would ask yourself, do I enjoy spending time with him? Do I feel safe, respected, and appreciated? And am I curious to keep getting to know him instead of, am I falling in love with him? Right? Because you do need those three elements that I just said, liking spending time with them, feeling respected and appreciated, and feeling curious to fall in love with someone. So I think it's like, take a step back from that falling, like, am I falling in love, to like, am I curious? Do I enjoy my time? If the answer to these questions is yes, then you don't need to have it all figured out yet. Just let the relationship unfold naturally. The last tip I have for you is, if after a few more months you still feel lukewarm, like, yeah, that's a sign. You don't want to string someone along that you don't see a future with. But at only like 6 weeks in, you're still in that data gathering phase. Also, how does he handle the fact that you're slower to develop feelings? If he's pressuring you or needing constant reassurance, that's a red flag. But if he's patient and secure, that's a green flag. And finally, I love that you're trying something different, right? If you've historically gone for that instant spark and it hasn't led to fulfilling relationships, this is a great chance to see what happens when you date someone with staying power rather than just hot and heavy chemistry. Bottom line, give yourself time, stay present, and trust that the clarity will come naturally. If in a few months you still feel emotionally stuck, then you'll know it's time to move on. I also just want to say, in the early stages of dating Johnny, my husband, I had the same kind of scenario. I was getting to know him and I was kind of lukewarm at first. I wasn't thinking, am I falling in love with him? I was just thinking, like, do I want to be in a relationship with him? Meanwhile, he was really into me from the beginning, and he knew basically right away that he wanted to date me seriously and that I was the person he was looking for. First of all, he didn't pressure me, and I also didn't let this pressure me because, that was for him to navigate, and I was navigating my own thing of like, do I like this person? Do I want to be with this person? I knew it was on me to get to know him and feel it out on my own pace without wasting his time, of course. And I wasn't telling him my process. I wasn't updating him along the way like, "Oh, well, I don't know." Like, I just focused on my actions of getting to know him and not being stuck in my head. And eventually, it did happen, right? Eventually, it did click, and I did actually realize that I had feelings for him. It just took a lot longer than it did for him, and that's okay. It's not necessarily a red flag. All right, moving right along to the next one. So, this one is about trouble in the honeymoon phase, which we all know is like the first few months of a relationship when everything's supposed to be happy and easy. Okay, here we go. I, 29 female, have been with my partner, 30 male, for 8 months. We said I love you to each other. We know each other's parents. They actually met a few times already, and I love him so much. But the question is it normal to have so many arguments so early in dating? Every month, we have at least one big argument. We always manage to work it out at the end, but isn't it supposed to be the first 6 to 7 months of the relationship, the honeymoon period, where you don't have any fights? Is this a red flag or is it normal? I also want to mention that he is Italian and I am also a very fiery person. I don't know if this has to do with personality or if it's something I need to run from. Please help. Thanks. So, okay. Let me know in the comments on Spotify or YouTube or in my DMs what you think about this one. If two really passionate people keep having like one fight a month in the first few months of dating, is it a red flag? I don't think this is a huge red flag. I wish we had some more information here, like who's starting the fights, how long do they last, what's the vibe after the fight? Are you guys hurling insults at each other or what? Like, I don't know the nature of these fights and like what they're about. But if you're having arguments, the silver lining here is that it means you're at least bringing things up that you want to work on or want to pay attention to. And that's a step in the right direction. Again, you didn't share any information about these arguments about, but it's great that you are at least able to repair them. I'm curious to know if these are meaningful conflicts about values, respect, or relationship needs, or are they small, like avoidable things that escalate because of the way you communicate? Because these are two very different things. And I get that you both are passionate, which isn't a bad thing, but passion does not have to mean constantly fighting. And I'm wondering if you two talked about how you want to handle disagreements. Like, what is the best case scenario for working through conflict together? I know it's kind of a weird conversation to have, like talking about how we want to talk about things, but it is an essential conversation that I think a lot of couples need to have to get on the same page about how you will work together to get through something rather than kind of just firing shots at each other and hoping for the best. You can decide together how you want your conflicts to go and get ahead of these things. And I think that would be a great avenue for you to explore. Here are some questions to explore when you are having the discussion around how you want to have conflict. Can you take breaks when things get heated instead of letting it spiral? Can you shift your communication style to be more curious and less accusatory? And can you both agree on what's worth fighting about and what's just noise? These are, small but powerful adjustments that can make a huge difference. If your fights feel more like battles and conversations, it might be time to look at like how you're both showing up in conflict. And also, I just would say don't expect one conversation to help you figure this out. It's going to take some time to kind of work through the problem and work through how you're going to approach conflict. It's not just a one and done conversation. Like you'll talk about it. And then when it happens in reality, like when you're having a fight, a lot of it might go out the window and you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and remind each other what you talked about. So this is not easy. This is not easy, but I guess I believe in your ability to get through this with your partner and kind of figure it out. Also, just because the honeymoon phase is hyped up for being all butterflies and like zero tension doesn't mean that's always how it goes. For some couples, the first few months are definitely effortless, but for others, early disagreements can help set the foundation for a stronger future, as long as you're both growing from them instead of repeating the same fight over and over. Early on in the honeymoon phase, I definitely had some tiffs with Johnny. Like he did some things that annoyed me or I didn't get, and I would gently call it out. I wasn't snapping at him. I wasn't like blowing up at him or anything. We don't blow up at each other. But I definitely was like, I didn't like that or that rubbed me the wrong way. And that happened within the first 2 or 3 months of dating. If you're noticing a pattern of fighting to just fight and like get attention, because that does happen, like sometimes we pick fights to get attention, or maybe if these arguments feel draining instead of productive, then yeah, that's something to look at more closely. And maybe that's just a red flag that the relationship isn't going to work. But a fiery relationship just doesn't have to be a volatile one, right? You can be passionate without being mean. You can be fiery without being disrespectful, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to eliminate conflict, it's just to learn how to fight well, respectfully, and keeping your connection intact. If you're both willing to work on that, you're going to be in a much better place long term. It's also important to remember the difference between healthy conflict and unhealthy conflict. So, like, healthy conflict will lead to a deeper understanding, resolution, and stronger emotional intimacy, whereas unhealthy conflict will feel repetitive, doesn't lead to change, and creates emotional exhaustion. And you might want to ask yourself, are we fighting to understand each other or are you just fighting to win? There is no winning. The only win you have when you're fighting in a relationship is that you both get through it together with a deeper understanding. It's not you versus them, it's you both versus the problem, right? As a team. So, okay, action steps for you. I would approach your partner and just be like, listen, we seem to have a fight every month. I want to get ahead of this. I want our relationship to work out. Can we talk about how we're talking about things and where can we make improvements? I would kind of replay one of your fights. Obviously, don't get into the fight, but just kind of like break it down and be like, what triggered both of you? It's like, okay, when you said this, I felt this. So I came back to you and said this. Like, one book that really helped Johnny and I do this is the book called Hold Me Tight. I'll link it in the show notes because it really does break down exactly what's happening when we're in conflict with our partner and how much deeper everything goes. That's what we don't realize. Like all these surface level fights you might be having, whether you're 10 years in or 10 months in or 10 weeks in, like the reason you're having the fight is just so much deeper than the surface level thing. So just keep that in mind. And I hope that this answer helps. I hear this dilemma a lot, and if you're listening, you can probably relate. Okay, here goes. I, 30 female, am in probably the healthiest and loving relationship with my partner, 32 male, but it doesn't feel exciting, which is probably because I've been with avoidant partners in the past. So, how do you know if it's a secure relationship or if it's really just boring and will fizzle out? And what do you do when this is what you wanted, but now you're missing the chase? I mean, the grass is always greener, right? I kind of think about it like this though. If you're used to eating french fries and pizza all the time, or replace that with any indulgent food you love, switching to a healthier option like grilled salmon and roasted veggies will feel kind of boring at first. Like it's good for you, eating fries every day isn't the best sustainable choice, but that doesn't mean you're jumping for joy over your plate of salmon just yet. And this isn't a red flag. Like it doesn't mean that this boring feeling you're feeling, it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong relationship. What it does mean is that when you're in a secure relationship, when that anxious, avoidant push pull isn't keeping you on your toes, you actually have to create your own excitement, which is kind of awesome. Like when your partner isn't keeping you guessing, when you actually are stable and know where you stand with them, you together have to add the seasoning, mix up the flavors, add a little sauce, keep things interesting, back to the food metaphor. Because here's the thing, that anxious avoidant dynamic is built in excitement. It keeps you hyper focused on the relationship, constantly chasing that next emotional high, waiting for the next text or analyzing like every little interaction. And then when that just isn't there, it can feel too calm and like something's missing. I definitely experienced this when I broke up with my ex. I didn't have any relationship anxiety anymore. And I was like, wow, like what do I think about now that I don't have this relationship anxiety anymore because my relationship's over? Like it's just not there. And I've definitely had that experience in my relationship with Johnny because we're so stable and secure. It's like, I just don't have this anxiety anymore. So, this is actually a good thing. This is what emotional security feels like. The early stage dopamine rush, aka the honeymoon phase, is biologically designed to wear off, right? And then what replaces it is that oxytocin and deeper emotional bonding, which feels different and it also feels less thrilling and more grounding. If you've mostly been in chaotic relationships, you might confuse the lack of anxiety with the lack of passion, right? If you've mostly experienced that avoidant anxious push pull dynamic, when it's gone, you're going to feel like there's something missing. And what that really comes down to is missing the chase, missing the need to earn someone's love. When you don't need to work to earn their love and affection, it feels weird at first, right? If your relationship feels like a dramatic TV show that keeps you on that cliffhanger at the end of every episode, you just need to know what happens next. You just need to keep see what happens next. Like that isn't the kind of relationship you want either. We can get really hooked on these things, like needing to earn love and affection and feeling like you have to like work for it and feeling like you are hooked on the ups and downs, the roller coaster of like the hot and cold of your partner. It feels like, oh, we're like working on it, we're working through something. But it's like, actually, when that's all gone, it's really nice. And yeah, it feels weird. So, back to your question though, if you want to stay with this person, and I hope you do because it sounds like you found someone who's really secure, how do you add excitement? So, here are some ways to add excitement to your relationship because, again, you have to create the excitement now. The first one is to talk about your dreams and goals. Not just surface level stuff, get deep. What do you actually want individually and together? And how can you take steps towards that? That is exciting. Another one is planning something totally new together. Do something you've never done together. Get outside your comfort zones together. This will boost the excitement and boost your desire. I've had, guests come on to talk about how when you are in a long-term relationship, when you do new things together, you are also going to be boosting that sexual desire for each other, which is great. People assume that excitement and spontaneity in relationships just happen, but you do have to plan it. So make sure you're planning those weekly date nights. Make sure you're planning weekend getaways like every couple months or a big trip once a year or whatever it is that you want to do. You need to be on these things and creating that excitement and that novelty in your relationship. Also, mix up your routine. If you are in a relationship where you're watching TV every night, switch it up. Sometimes Johnny and I, when we get stuck in that routine, we switch to a board game, and that's really fun. So we don't have to like go big. You don't need to like go out on the town. You can just do something different at home. Sometimes we bake cookies or we try making a new cocktail or something just different. And finally, to make your relationship exciting, don't forget to focus on your own personal fulfillment, right? Do you need your relationship to be your source of excitement in life? No, it shouldn't be actually, I don't think. I think create the excitement in your own life yourself outside your relationship. Your relationship doesn't need to be your only source of like interest and happiness in your life. Really, let's think about where did this idea even come from that a relationship needs to feel exciting all the time? That sounds exhausting. Personally, I would call my relationship extremely stable and predictable, and I love that. I get enough excitement and unpredictability from my work as a full-time podcaster and entrepreneur. So, why does your relationship even need to be the source of excitement for you? And of course, it doesn't mean that you let the spark die. It doesn't mean that you let it fizzle out. It'll only fizzle out if you stop fueling it. So, this doesn't mean chasing drama or trying to recreate that initial high. It's by continuing to invest in each other, finding joy in the stability, and making your own fun instead of just expecting it to happen. Like your partner is not there to entertain you, right? Your partner is there to be supportive, your safe haven, your home base. And that's secure. And one last thing, boredom isn't always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's a sign that you are resisting something. Boredom is resistance, right? So instead of assuming your relationship is missing something, ask yourself, what is stopping me from fully embracing the calm? I also just want to say on the other side, not all boredom is normal. Here's when it might be an issue. One, if you feel like roommates rather than romantic partners. Two, if there is a lack of physical connection or emotional intimacy and no desire to fix it on either part. Three, if you're actively avoiding spending time together, definitely been there. Four, and if you feel unfulfilled, not just comfortable. I remember feeling really bored in one of my long-term relationships because my partner was just boring. You know, we had the stability and security I wanted, but he just wasn't a good match for me. He preferred to spend all of his time watching movies and playing video games and didn't take care of himself and had no real desire to explore like New York City with me. I felt really stagnant and I wasn't struggling with a lack of drama. I was just struggling with a lack of connection and shared excitement. So and of course, when I broke up with him, he suddenly booked a solo trip to hike Mount Kilimanjaro and started working out because it always happens like that, right? So, yeah, in that example, I was bored in that relationship because I was with the wrong person. But that's different from what a lot of people experience when they mistake a secure, healthy relationship for being boring just because it doesn't have the same highs and lows as an avoidant or anxious dynamic. You can have the stability and excitement, but it comes from being with someone who matches your energy and is willing to grow with you, not from built in chaos. The key is knowing the difference between feeling bored because your relationship is stable and feeling bored because your partner just isn't a good match for you. So, what do you think? Have you ever mistaken stability for boredom? Let me know in the comments. And I hope this helps if you're dealing with this because I really do think this sounds so weird, but the boredom that comes with stability is something to work towards. Like, that's actually nice when you have that level of calmness in a relationship. It gives you so much space to explore other things in your life because your relationship isn't the only thing you have in your life. It's really nice. So I hope that's what we all get. I would love for all of you to have that. I don't want you to have a relationship that feels like a roller coaster you can't get off and you can't pay attention to anything else in your life. That's all I have for you today. Again, you can submit your dating questions and dilemmas in the form below anonymously. I've been answering them on YouTube. I try and answer 2 a week, and then I'm doing them once a month here on the podcast. So thanks again. I want to thank you for listening. Thanks for trusting me. I love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify or subscribing on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.